Good evening and welcome to League of Women Voters Presents. I'm Jim Robertson and our topic tonight is renewable energy and how's the city doing in meeting its self-imposed standards. With me tonight are Connie Kacprowicz, she's the Marketing and Communications Supervisor at Columbia Power and Light.
Water and Light.
And John Conway, who is a retired civil engineer and chairman of the Water and Light Advisory Board. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So in 2004, Columbia voters adopted renewable energy standards that set benchmarks throughout the next years and decades. And by the end of 2017, which is about a year and a half or so from now, the goal is 15% of all energy use in Columbia.
Correct.
So how are we doing, Connie?
We're doing really well. We've surpassed the limit so far. Obviously, it's a big jump from where we are now, almost at 7% to go up to 15%. But we sent out a request for proposals for wind energy. So we're in the process of the purchasing department and the legal department is looking over those proposals. So that will help add to that. One of the other very exciting things is that we've seen the customer installed solar go up quite a bit. From 2014 to 2015, we had a 55% increase in customer owned solar, as well as some solar that we added by the West Ash pump station. So we're making some good strides.
So that customer installed solar helps you meet the goal.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, if a person installs solar, they enter into what's called a net metering agreement. And so if they don't use all the electricity that they're producing, they can actually send that back out on the Columbia grid and it can be used by us. So the net, if they end up sending some back to us, we give them credits for that at the customer rate. So it's a very favorable rate. A lot of cities only do, or a lot of utilities only offer the cost for the electricity, but we offer the residential rate or the commercial rate. With that, we ask for the renewable energy credits. So we can count those towards meeting our renewable standard.
I see. And as a percentage of total, what's...
It's still really tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite at 1%, but it's growing. And what we've seen is not only is the technology improving, but also the cost has gone down quite a bit, as well as the tax credit has been extended. So with the rebates from Columbia Water and Light, as well as this tax credit, it's really getting into the more affordable range for someone who knows that they're going to be in their home or their business for several years and wants to make that investment.
Mm-hmm. John, what is the Water and Light Advisory Board's role in this renewable energy world?
Yeah, Jim, the Water and Light Advisory Board serves as a liaison in an advisory capacity between the department and the city council. And as the ordinance came about, then the advisory board entered into discussions as to what would the renewable energy portfolio look like, or what are the possibilities of obtaining renewable energies to meet that ordinance. And so discussions were taken up and ideas between the department staff as well as the advisory board to do that. And then as the ordinance changed to up the limits or the goals for the renewable energy ordinance, that there was much discussion made through the advisory board and through a number of different meetings, and then we brought a recommendation to the council as to where we thought the new goals should be. Mm-hmm. And then subsequently to that, then the council adopted those.
Now, there's associated with those goals, there's a limit on cost to customers, right?
There's a 3%, I'll call it a revenue limit, annual revenue limit, and a computation that's made to compute the 3%, then you compute the cost, Jim, of the portfolio, the different varieties of renewable energy that we have, and then you total those up, and then you compare that to the 3% figure. And currently, we are, we're at a 42.8%, based upon the last report, 42.8% of the limit. So we still have 58.2.
Quite a bit of room, and that's. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, and that will be absorbed as we head to the new goal.
Yeah, and that's 3% more than the cost of traditional energy. I mean, is that what we're comparing?
Yeah.
So let's say, I'm making up numbers, but coal-fired energy costs 6 cents, then renewable energy cannot cost more than 3% more than that.
Oh, I think it's a little more.
It's more complex. Of course it is.
It's not as easy as that.
Okay.
The way the ordinance was written was that it couldn't raise rates more than 3%.
I got you.
And so there's a lot of different things that go into rates, not only just the power itself, but also all of the maintenance of all the wires, the billing, all those things that go along with keeping the system up and running. And so what we do is we look at the revenue to calculate that 3%.
Gotcha.
So the ordinance was written in such a way that we had to interpret it, and then the Water and Light Advisory Board has reviewed that as well.
So you can isolate those costs, not only to the energy production, but the cost of using it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And I think we probably need to mention that for those that want to get into the renewable energy ordinance and the compliance and the history of where we've been since it was enacted, Jim, that each year there is a renewable energy report that's issued, and the 2016 report is out. And what could help the consumer, those that want to take a more in-depth interest in looking at the A to Z renewable energy, is through that report, because it has a historical perspective to it that summarizes from day one, and it goes through the calculation of the cost and how all the portfolio is broken down and how much is contributed from wind and solar and landfill gas and so on. And I think the utility customer would find that very useful in seeing where we are and have been with our renewable energy.
Mm-hmm. What's in that portfolio in general terms?
Mainly comprising wind is the biggest contributor, and with wind we've seen it since the first contract that we entered into in 2007, 2008. We've seen the cost go dramatically down. And through other resource planning, we've found that wind is a very good resource for us. However, when you look at renewable energy, a lot of it is intermittent in nature. So it's very important to have a good mixture of resources. When you think about it, in the winter, you talk about the wind chill factor because the wind is blowing.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, when it's really hot and the sun's out, you only wish the wind was blowing. So those two resources make good partners for each other, but they're still intermittent in nature. Solar is only about 1%, so hopefully we'll see that go up with the cost going down. One of our best resources from a utility standpoint is the landfill gas. Since we own the landfill, we capture the methane that's created as the waste is decomposing and generate electricity from that, and that's a constant resource. That trash is always decomposing. Mm-hmm. And one other thing that we're working on, we recently stopped burning coal at our local municipal plant back in September, but we're continuing to research biomass alternatives because biomass is also an approved renewable resource. So that could be something that exciting down the line, as far as if there's some way that we can figure out a way to use things like agricultural waste products, you know, corn stover, different things, then that would be really exciting to add that to our mix as well.
Will that take substantial refitting? at the power
That's
plant? Or?
that's where the limitations of
Yeah.
biomass come in, because we have coal handling equipment there that was made to handle coal. And so you want to have something that's densified like coal is, and the same shape, doesn't absorb moisture, so that way you don't have to change out a lot of that equipment. So there's some different options out there. That's probably going to be a little bit longer term down the road, but the immediate future is probably going to be more wind and solar, and then eventually add another generator at the landfill gas plant.
There's plenty of capacity at the landfill?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
is that an inexhaustible
well,
source of electricity?
It's the, I'd say the way that, you know, it's permitted now, that we're in good shape. There's, you know, we could quickly move to the solid waste discussion, and that one thing that we would see at the landfill is that we need to increase our capability for recyclables so they don't get into the landfill, and increase that that rate, and then the landfill lasts longer.
So the goal is to keep stuff out of the landfill rather
keep
than
things out that aren't decomposing,
Sure,
that
yeah.
aren't.
and keep everything in balance, and
Yeah.
and it, you know, as a community, I think it's well thought of, is that we have a community facility that we're making the best, making an investment in, and have a return in terms of the renewable energy. And it's,
Yeah.
I think right now we're at 3 megawatts, and we'll have one more to 4 megawatts. And then, as you can see from the report, that makes up over 3% of the portfolio.
So it's a significant.
Yeah, and it's just,
Yeah.
I think it's, it behooves the community to look at aspects like that that promotes that, and become a community leader in that.
As far as wind-generated energy, is that a function of geography more than choice, I guess, or supply? I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
all of the above.
Yeah, it's there's been studies you can look. I think Department of Natural Resources has like a wind speed map on their website. There's only in northwest Missouri, a small portion in northwest Missouri, where the wind speeds are high enough to put in a wind farm, and we do get some electricity from that, from a wind farm in northwest Missouri. Most of it you see in Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa. We get some from Iowa as well. So you see that resource in a geographical location, in an area where it's not very populated, so you don't have the transmission lines. So not only have we had talks about transmission lines on a local level, but it's something that when you look at on a federal level, there really is a how are we going to get this wind energy from less populated areas where there's not a whole bunch of consumers of that electricity to where it's going to be used. So that is one aspect of wind that there's several different facets, and people have a lot of different opinions on it as far as, you know, building those transmission lines and actually getting it to where it's going.
But what I'm hearing is that's probably where the bulk of our renewable energy is going to come from down the road, as well as now.
And that's where our request for proposal has been focused recently. And we have responses, and so, and there's been numerous responders as to that proposal, and the design of that process is to let the wind energy world be as competitive as they can be, so that the people in Columbia benefit from that.
Sure.
Through a lower cost, and it's and there's a certain degree of complexity that goes into that evaluation, and one factor of that is to looking for the long term, and what factors might change between now 10, 15, 20 years. And you know, sometimes, Jim, it's like, it's a good deal today, but is it going to be, where is it going to be down the road?
Well, I think you bring up a very good point, too, is I think that there's more changes happening in the electric utility business than there have been maybe since like the 50s and 60s when you saw air conditioners come on and all the electric appliances. Right now, there's so many variables that long-term planning used to be a lot more straightforward. We could count on a certain amount of growth. We could count on a lot of factors being the same. Right now, we're seeing more renewables come that are more cost effective, but also what's going to be the impact of electric vehicles. Are we going to do that? How energy efficient can we be? Because if we can all lower our demand, then those resources go a lot further. So there's a lot of nuances that go into planning, and you know, we can look towards the long term, but there's some things that we'll just have to see what happens. For instance, storage. If we can start storing the solar energy that's reaching its peak, you know, noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and use it at 5 to 7, which is when the utilities peak is, that's going to be a game changer too. Yeah. And we're still seeing that storage is a little too expensive to really, but hopefully like solar, it will get more cost effective as we move forward.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of focus on storage right now.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk a bit about conservation. What kind of impact, I know the city has several programs and pretty energetic conservation. We had an energy audit just a couple of weeks ago.
How'd you do?
We're great.
Good.
But,
it's a real eye-opening experience, though.
Yeah, well, we have a fairly new house, so I was hoping it would do great.
Yeah,
But what has been the impact of those programs on energy use in Columbia?
It's made a pretty big impact. We've seen on the commercial side, the commercial lighting rebate. You know, in our homes, lighting doesn't represent that much of our utility bill, but in commercial, it does. And that's a really easy thing for business customers to do. And we've had a lot of great responses from that. We've had testimonial ads, and so the commercial side, that's really making a huge difference. Because when you think about it, the grocery stores that are open 24 hours, they have their lights on all the time. When you're looking at the residential side, we have rebates for the big things, the things that are going to really save some energy. And a lot of people don't necessarily make the connection between weather and their heating and cooling. But that's the biggest impact, is your heating and cooling. So we're really going after those to make sure that people have the proper amount of insulation. They seal up the air leaks, seal up their ductwork, and get efficient heating and cooling systems. But whether, probably partly to the recession and then the advent of these escalated energy conservation programs, we've seen our electric load growth that traditionally was around 2% drop to about 1.25%. So that's the model that we're going forward with.
So is that just a year-over-year comparison?
Yeah.
So you don't have multiple years yet to see what's going to happen with that?
And I think it's noteworthy, Jim, to have some discussion about the city's electrical integrated resource plan. And we do that about every 5 years. And we just recently updated that. And the short explanation of the integrated resource plan is that we look at demand side management practices. How can energy conservation, how can we reduce the demand, and then the supply side. And then the department is just charged with the responsibility to implement the integrated resource plan, and that's all set out in the integrated resource plan, and it's underway, and that's why you keep seeing all the publicity and the rebates and also that we certainly to get it into the school system. work with students to get their early understanding of energy conservation and what they need to do as they see their household usage and so on. And there's a pretty well laid out elements of that plan that are ongoing that sometimes the customer doesn't always see, but and I think the Renewable Energy Report is a mechanism that allows the consumer to take a time out and look just to see how the city is doing. And
so that's at gocolumbiamo.com?
Yes, yes. Although we're in the transition of changing our URL, so it's going to be como.gov.
Como.gov.
Yeah, but you can probably use your favorite search engine and say Columbia Renewable Energy Report, and I would assume that it would pop up. So,
John, you being an engineer, maybe you can make this make sense for me, or maybe not. I'm always fascinated about how you bring in renewable energy on the same grid that you bring in coal-fired energy, and how do you? I mean, a watt's a watt, right?
That'd be correct. There's, well, it's more than meets the eye. And I would relate it to the Midwest Independent
System Operator,
MISO, and they oversee we're in the MISO area, and so they oversee that transmission and the delivery and so on. And it has the complexity that you through all the transactions you can follow it, and it's sometimes that it will lose its identity as it makes its way through the MISO system, but it does work, and the energy is there. And
does MISO ensure that we're getting that say the wind generating producer is giving us what we're paying for, that it's being produced on that end, what we're consuming on this end?
Right, and it's that's how it's dispatched, and there's Waterline staff that's their sole purpose is to watch over that and to order out, forecast what the demand's going to be, and we're going to get it from here and here and here and here, and then set those.
It just shows up.
Yeah, but we don't mark every little electron. So, but yeah, we have. It's a very, very complicated thing.
Yeah.
And so, but basically, they're in charge of where the energy's coming, where it's needed, the transmission charges. So if someone uses our system, we get paid for that. But yeah, you're right. We might not necessarily get that exact electron from the wind power in Iowa, but all the accounting is there to say, okay, this is where you got this, and this is where you got that.
It goes into the system, and we take energy out of the system.
And there's sometimes that we sell energy as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I'd be the first to admit to you, Jim, the real difficulty with it is you can't see it.
Yeah. that's my imagination won't go there.
Yeah. But on the other hand, beware and don't touch it.
Because you can feel it. Huh? So is there plenty of capacity, renewable energy, to get us to 15% and beyond in the next 10 years?
I believe so, yeah. I think
they add in capacity regularly?
Yeah.
And setting in motion and being diligent about it, setting those things in motion that will create that additional opportunities and so on, and so we and certainly there's we want to think that we always want to be in compliance, and so to be in compliance, you take measures as to and also be timely about it. And then also try to control what you can control. And it's like Connie said, there's a lot of variables, and that go on. But then again, we assess those and see how they're going to impact us, and that you know, up to date we've met each goal, and we certainly have I know the council has the expectation that the department will take those actions, Jim, to get us there. And so.
Good. Well, as we wind down here, what else have I not asked you that we need to know about renewable energy?
Well, I think you hit on the energy efficiency thing, which I think is very important, because I talk a lot about renewable energy, and I always throw that in because there's so much waste that goes on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be uncomfortable in your home. In fact, you can be. There's the technology now where you can be more energy efficient and be more comfortable in your home. And so if we can do something to stop the waste, it's cheaper for us to actually buy efficiency from our customers than for them to waste it. And that's kind of our motto and what we really want to embrace. So I think that that was a very important point that you brought up, and it should be a part of any renewable energy discussion.
And I think there's, to add to what Connie's saying there, Jim, there will be a movement to smart meters, and that will help people determine their decision making and how they're going to use their energy, and give them more information. Our new billing system will provide more information to the customers so that they can make their self-assessments. I've always been an advocate of the load management switches that I know Connie out of...
They've discontinued those, haven't you?
Well, we're in the process of reviewing them.
Okay.
There's new heating and cooling systems out there that we can't use the radio transmitted signals on.
Gotcha.
So that program is in flux right now, I would say.
And so it's, you know, that's another, you know, to get to the end point, it's a little bit here, a little bit there, and keep adding those up, and then you'll be surprised as to where the
Smart management.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good. That's very interesting, and I learned some stuff. And by the way, we did add insulation in the attic.
Good for
So
you.
We got up to what, 50?
R50, yeah.
R50, so we're good.
You're a superstar. We all have R50. We're good.
All right. We're doing our part.
We are.
That's right.
Well, thank you, John and Connie, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I hope our viewers learned something. I know I did. And until next time, good night.